Hello, and welcome to this session on the rise of the Saudi Pro League. A reminder to please ask questions at any time via the Q&A box to the right of your screen, and we'll answer as many as we can throughout the discussion. You can also share thoughts and tweets on social media. Please use the hashtag FTFootball. Well, thank you to our speakers. Thank you for watching. The Kingdom Sovereign Wealth Fund, the Public Investment Fund, the PIF, has bought Newcastle United, and now we're seeing Saudi Arabia's push to develop the Pro League, 2 billion in long-term sponsorship deals for the league, and the top 4 clubs have been put under PIF ownership. We've seen stars like Cristiano Ronaldo and Neymar go there, and Saudi Arabia is becoming a giant in sports all around. So my first question to Saad Al-Lazeez, Vice Chairman of the Saudi Pro League, is, so you bought these stars. What is the strategy for growth from this point of the league?
Thank you, Simon, for the opportunity to speak about our story and our journey in the Saudi Pro League. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be with your distinguished guest to speak about it today. Just to take it back a bit, the transformation that's taken place in the Saudi Pro League is part of a wider transformation manifested itself in the launching of the Vision 2030 back in 2016. In the heart of that is sports, and in the heart of sports is obviously football, which is the most beloved and attractive sport to Saudi fans and the global fans. The strategy was launched early 2023. It just aims to put in the Saudi League as a top league in the world. We are pleased with what has been achieved so far. As a matter of fact, I think we are a bit ahead of schedule. We continue to grow and build on the success that we had, and hopefully the most important thing for us now is growth and sustainability of the Saudi League.
But how will you achieve growth? We know that you've bought big stars, but looking forward, how will you grow fans, television revenues, quality?
This is a long-term investment for us. We are not in it for a window or for a season or a couple of seasons. We have put together a long-term investment to make sure that the Saudi League sustains the growth and become part of the football landscape globally. So this is not a short term. It's not only about signing players. It has more pillars to it in terms of financial sustainability, commercial growth, and putting a robust governance around the Saudi Pro League.
Thank you. Let me go to Robert Klein, Managing Director of Football Media at IMG. What kind of growth are we seeing in television and other revenues since the arrival of these stars last year?
So we've been in partnership with Saad and the SPL since January 2023, initially for a 6-month period. And at that time, Ronaldo had just been signed to the league, a obviously marquee signing. And there was an opportunity and a huge interest from around the globe. So we set about working with the Saudi Pro League to get a distribution, which worked for a first 6-month period, which was then now extended. And we are partners now for the next 2 years in the international distribution. What I can tell you, and what has also been shared by the Saudi Pro League, is that between the first 6 months and then the following year, there was a 600% increase in the rights fees in that period. And that will be driven by the attention that it was getting, of course, by the players that were being attracted to the club, and the broadcaster demand around the world. What we've also seen is that the broadcaster mix we have is of high quality. So we're talking to players in the US, Fox, of DAZN, and in Italy, really top broadcasters who are not only obviously interested in the content, but also have got a great reach. And this is going to be important when you're talking about building the league long-term sustainably, as Saad is talking about. There are many aspects, There's the internal one, which will be the governance and the clubs, which they are managing very well at this point. And then internationally, we're talking about taking the story, and that is a long-term play. And it's very well understood by the Saudi Pro League.
You said a 600% rise in television revenues, which of course sounds impressive, but you're not able to give us any absolute numbers.
I will give absolute numbers because they are our partners. But what we can say is we are starting, from a base it was the first time that they went internationally. All right, but I have never seen, no matter what base you're starting from, an increase from a 6-month period into the following year that goes 600%. This highlights, I would say, the interest in the league, the attractiveness, and then, of course, the building blocks and the SPL. And I've been into the kingdom to talk to the friends. You can understand that this is very much a long-term play, and they will be there. You can see announcements and interest around other events, the Asian Cup. There's been discussion around the World Cup. And I personally believe that they will have a successful route to becoming what they're hoping to be, which is a top 5 league within 10 years. It's ambitious, but with the right people in place and with the long-term view, it's absolutely possible. And we could compare it to, for example, the Chinese Super League, which came in, also put in a heavy investment over the first 18 months and then stopped. That is not what the Saudi Pro League is about.
Let me go. 170 countries now. We've been watching it. I mean, so
correct.
The reach is just at a larger scale that we saw since the launch of the transformation strategy.
Let me go to Alex Phillips, administrator of the World Football Remission Fund, and he used to be UEFA's head of Asia-Europe affairs. And Alex, you've worked quite a bit in Saudi Arabia. So Robert says the aim is to be a top 5 league in 10 years. Do you think that's going to happen?
So executive summary, unlikely, but possible. So why? I would say, based on my experience, I worked a few years across Asia and have worked with leagues around the world. So the ambition was there before this current push, pre the current Crown Prince MBS. I remember being in a meeting with a very big club in Saudi, doing a consultation to help develop the league, and the CEO said to me straight, "How can we play in the UEFA Champions League? You work for UEFA. How can we apply?" I thought it was a joke at first, but actually he was deadly serious. And I mean, it was a serious question. You know, he was being serious. That was the level of the ambition. Then, that was 8-9 years ago. So the ambition, I think, has always been there. This has just supercharged it, the recent investments and the recent focus from the top. But good people, Robert mentioned already, there were good people back then, and they're still there. And the CEO of the league is now the president of the FA and is a very good person. I think there is a perception in a lot of Westerners that it's just Western consultants doing the work and Saudis don't know anything, which is not true at all, because this guy had read all the statutes and regulations of FIFA and knew what he was talking about. So there are good people. There is a culture, there is a football culture, contrary again to perception. There is a history. SPL already was a big league back then. Al Hilal's won more AFC Champions Leagues than anyone else. So there already was a culture, grassroots culture as well. And they understood the issues. Another big issue that they realized they had a problem with was the lack of, let's say, a document-based system, rule of law, if you like. There were no statutes. There had never even been a meeting of clubs. I mean,
this is just 8-9 years ago.
Yeah. So you can imagine, you know, in England, the Premier League shareholders meetings, regular thing, it's part of the culture. So we organized a meeting of clubs. I brought Rick Parry, who's first CEO of the Premier League, CEO of a big Liverpool, and a former president of La Liga, to bring the clubs together to say, guys, you need to work out a system for decision making, whether it's 2/3, 50%, simple majority, whatever it is. You need to make some basic principles, write them down, and then manage your league according to a system of rule of law.
So you're saying it has been professionalized, there is a football culture, there's been ambition for a long time, there is money, obviously. So then why do you say you think it's very unlikely that they will be a top 5 league in the next 10 years?
Good question. Whole series of reasons. The first one is first mover advantage. I mean, the English Premier League has been basically investing and doing this for 144 years, since 1888, and the same applies to the other big 5 leagues in Western Europe. And then you have, MLS has been trying for 3 decades, and that's just the the latest incarnation in the US. So there's a whole load of other leagues that would like to be there too, not just in the Gulf, but elsewhere. So there are lots of different reasons. That's one of them. But another reason is the issue of trust, and whether there is an ability to build a culture of rule of law for that the clubs can work to. And then the ecosystem below, in other words, grassroots, where are the players? You can buy in the best players in the world. That was tried, in England in the 90s, but the English players were not anywhere near, the average quality was nowhere near the best foreign players coming in. And if you have a huge gap like that, it won't allow the league to reach the top. You need to develop your own players, and that means a very strong culture and infrastructure, ecosystem below. And most importantly, the final point is the ecosystem above. Because in Europe, the Premier League and all the others, it's not just because it's a great league, it's because there's the UEFA club competitions, the European club competitions, which add a huge amount of value and drive the performance higher and higher in all of the different leagues, which doesn't really exist in West Asia at the moment. I think regionalization will be a great way to go in future to help the clubs and the leagues, all of them, but Saudi League being the top one in West Asia to reach a higher level.
Go ahead. Okay, if I just my comment here, the notion of becoming a top 5 or a top 10 league is not really what this is all about. For us, we set out to be the best we can be, and if that is a top 5, then this is where we want to go. If it's a top 10, but for us, I think we are putting all of the success factors and enablers in place to make sure that this is a sustainable growth. And I think this is not, a 1 or a 2 and even 5 or 6 years of play. You have to do this for the long run in order for you to get to where you want to get to, in order for you to compete with the products that you see out there, whether it's the Premier League or any of the top 5 European leagues. So for me, the transformation, while it's highlighted by the player acquisition and the work we have done in the summer and will continue to do in the upcoming windows, it has more to it than just the SPL transformation strategy, but rather the whole football ecosystem within the kingdom, which we can control. I mean, we control what we can control, and we'll grow from there. In my opinion, it's possible to be a top 5 league, and that's just our goal. And we'll do everything we can to be a top class league in years.
A reminder that you can ask questions at any time via the Q&A box to the right of your screen, and we'll answer as many as we can during the discussion. Robert, you also wanted to come in on Alex's comments about top 5 league possibility.
Well, I think it, yes, to go to what Saad is saying, you have to look at what's being put in place, and therefore I've been at close proximity. And there are a number of things that are important in terms of the structure, first of all, of the league in itself, which has already grown significantly in the last 12 months in terms of also the personnel they have there and the skill set. The media house that they've put alongside it, which is also a long-term play in terms of controlling and be able to do your productions, your content, and content types in the right form, right? Because ultimately there is going to be always good storylines, and I think a good player strategy as well as club strategy, and that has to be able to be communicated. So that's on the commercial side. We've seen on the sponsor side that there's already a strong interest in long term. These are all building blocks that are going to contribute, and it is true that the club strategy, the player strategy is important, and international success, which at the moment will come through the AFC Champions League and other competitions within the region, needs to be consistent. There's a Club World Championship that is coming, which is also expanding, as you know, every 4 years. That is also going to play a role. The clubs, if they perform well there, it has an impact on the fan base. So I see a significant difference. I wasn't there 8 or 10 years ago, but from what Alex has said to where they stand now, And I've also, as I said, I've spoken with the people from the sports ministry. I have gone down to look at the other projects, and that gives me confidence. And let's say, whether it's top 10 or top 5, this league is going to be sustainable. It's going to be around, and it's going to be playing good football.
I mean, you talked about the fan base and sustainability. We have a question saying the average Saudi Pro League attendance this season is 8,285. So I know that at some big clubs and at some games with the arrival of stars, crowds have been much higher, but still the average is really quite low. How important is that, fans in stadiums as a measure of your success?
It's huge. I mean, viewership and attendance, of course, is the name of the game. We get all of the stars. It's an area for improvement for us. We continue to do that. It has more to it than just bringing the stars. And I think there is a growth here by about 25, I would say 26% from last year. And not to mention the second half last year was highlighted by the arrival of Cristiano Ronaldo. So there was a growth in the second half of 22-23 season. Then there's another growth this year. But obviously, this is a big opportunity for improvement for the Saudi League. So fan engagement is one of the focus areas for us. In stadium attendance is obviously also a huge area for us to improve.
And there are many metrics, right? So stadium attendance is one, and it's one that Saad has just answered to. We are also working very closely with IMG Digital on the exactly the delivery of digital content and also the social channels. Now, the Saudi Pro League, in the space of 6 months, grew by 1 million followers organically. This is not paid for content. This is organically, people naturally coming in. The importance there is that there has been interest from the outside on these digital channels, and that growth is faster than any of the other big leagues, including American leagues, organically.
Yeah, I mean, if you start at a low base of international engagement and you bring in Cristiano Ronaldo and Neymar, then you would expect people to get more interested. You expect attendances to grow somewhat.
Yes.
Digital engagement. But how sustainable is that? So the reported salaries for Ronaldo and Neymar are much, much higher than Premier League English footballers in England are earning. And the Premier League obviously has much higher revenues. So how long can you keep paying stars those kinds of salaries when the revenues of the league don't seem to justify it?
First of all, I go back to what I said all along. This is a long-term investment. You have to start somewhere. And, sometimes you have to overcompensate. And, ultimately, what you look for is how you sustain that investment. Obviously, you're going to need to have to, grow your commercial revenues, whether it's, broadcasting or other commercial revenues. So for me, you start somewhere and you have to overcompensate. But, who says that, that for me, the transfer values that we did this summer is a fair market value. Yes, some of the salaries are higher than what you see in the Premier League, but we have got to start somewhere. And I think as this grow, it's part of our model. The prices will justify themselves by the returns on the investment that we're gonna, assume in years to go.
Thank you. Alex, you wanted to say?
Just a point on the revenues. When I worked at Deloitte many years ago and created the rich list and the financial analysis, we created this concept that there were 3 revenue streams. Media, sponsorship, and match day. But this, in reality, this only applies to around, say, 15 countries across the world. The vast majority of countries do not have a business model that's based on that system because the general public maybe don't have money because there's a small oligarchy in certain countries that have the money. And in Saudi, they are trying to diversify the economy so that people will have money in their pocket and they will have jobs so that they can go out and buy subscriptions and TV, etc. In other parts of the world, it's transfer income. So this, I don't think it's fully fair to judge this. I mean, this is something that if the money is there for a period of time, then this is sustainable. I mean, Roman Abramovich arrived at Chelsea and people said he will be gone in a couple of years. He was there 2 decades, paying over
Well, it was
paying,
sustainable for
subsidizing.
him because he started with a fortune of, some say, $50 billion. And it
Mm.
may be sustainable for the Saudi state because they have an enormous amounts of money. The question is, how long do they want to do this? But I mean, I want to ask you about your experiences around the world. You've seen a US professional soccer up close. You're very familiar with Asia. We had the Chinese Pro League. Somebody has asked about that as a kind of model for what happened with Saudi Arabia. China put in a lot of money, bought star players for a short period and then withdrew.
Mhm.
How do you see Saudi Arabia within those comparisons?
Well, I think Saudi has a better chance of making it than the other examples because the World Cup is coming in 2034. That's 10 years, so it cannot fail before then, right? So
They are the only bidder for that World Cup.
Yeah. Investment is not going to, the project is not going to dip for them, I don't think. You never know, but it will be unlikely. But we have seen many cases there are many cases in the US. We had NASL, they brought Pele, Beckenbauer, Cruyff, the best players in the world, and the league collapsed. So it has been tried before. China was another example. Again, there's a problem with autocracies in the sense that you don't know what's going to happen. It's unpredictable. So things could change. The way it looks today, it looks quite stable, and that already short term there's been massive gains. For example, Egypt is next door, had a bigger league. Saudi league's bigger than the Egyptian league now, and it's more balanced. There are more bigger teams, so there is rapid growth. So when I say it's unlikely to make top 5, that's because it's very, very ambitious. It doesn't mean there's not going to be big growth. But so that's how I would look at it. It's unpredictable, though. That's the issue. Whereas in Europe, these are basically very strong movements of people, and in South America as well. So what the league does and the clubs is building on top of what's already there. La Masia, the Barcelona academy, when they take Messi or Iniesta or Xavi, they're already the best players in the country or the world at their age. They're just finishing schools. I mean, the players are coming from the culture and the ecosystem. That's where the value is coming from. And that's what has to be built underneath the top, where already the investment focus is there.
The government has said it's doing this partly to diversify the economy, as Alex mentioned. But how does a football league diversify the economy, given that through the history of football, most leagues, most clubs lose money? So how is this an economic asset for the country, or could it be an economic asset?
It's, through global engagement, tourism, job creation. There's lots, to talk about. And for me, it's the fan engagement, the global engagement aspect of it that helps, achieve that goal.
We've had a couple of questions about plans to promote the league outside Saudi Arabia, in Asia or elsewhere. So is there, for example, thoughts about playing matches outside Saudi Arabia to encourage engagement?
For me, when we set out the strategy, we always maintain the strategy is a live document. Of course, global engagement, and there are many tools that you can use to enhance that global engagement. One of which is probably playing some games. We have done that in the past. So there's been a couple of Super Cups that were played in London, 2015, 2016. I think there was another one, 2017. So there's been a couple of games already played. So we have tried those, and it was all of those 2 or 3 games were still out in London. So we have done those in the past. We'll continue to do that. I'm sure you heard about the tour that the Saudi clubs have done this summer in Japan and China, and the huge reception that those clubs got when they arrived there. So those are plans that we are already implementing.
Robert, I wanted to ask you about your work in selling TV rights to the Saudi League. I mean, you're going to broadcasters in countries that have never shown Saudi football. Clearly, you now have these great stars to help sell the product. But how do you use the presence of Ronaldo, say, or Benzema to create a kind of long-term story about the league to broadcasters who've never been interested before?
Well, I think the easy answer is that when you've got Ronaldo and Benzema joining a league, broadcasters are coming to you. So that is something that is obviously very positive when you're commercially selling. We have an 80-strong team working on behalf of the Saudi Pro League all around the globe. And those conversations are made easier. Now, everyone also understands that football is cyclical, right? And that Ronaldo will be there for the time that he's here. But what they're also seeing is a commitment to the long term. And so actually, when we're always talking about, the league and where it will be in 5 to 10 years' time, when we know that there is this commitment, the broadcasters see it and they hear it, and therefore are, consistently at the door. So it actually makes the commercial conversation easier rather than harder. The same thing in terms of talking to them. And we're talking about Ronaldo and Benzema, but you've got stars that are coming from all around the world. So when there's an influx, for example, of Brazilian players that are coming in, our conversations, be it with Bandes or Globo in Brazil, are also a lot easier. So we're really looking at, first of all, the league, but then also customizing and localizing the interest for the individual broadcasters. Then on top of that, in the internationalization, as Saad was saying, we are trying to have discussions to look at what else can be done. And the league wants to also be able to go and touch people internationally on a digital means. But if you can take the clubs abroad, first through friendlies for sure, and then maybe through super leagues, you're going to have that impact. And this, I was working 5.5 years building the Bundesliga internationally. It is competitive out there. So we are using the word ambitious. It is challenging. But if you've got the long term, and if you're going to be bringing big players and then also get the club franchises out there, you're going to give yourself a chance to achieve these objectives.
One more reminder from me that if you're watching, you can ask questions at any time via the Q&A box to the right of your screen. I'll receive them on my iPad and we'll ask some of them in these closing minutes of the panel. So far, the league is very much funded by Saudi Arabian state interests, especially the PIF, the Public Investment Fund, but also companies sponsor that are linked to the Saudi state. What prospects are there to get foreign investment and foreign private investment into this league?
I think that comes in several forms. First of all, going back to the PIF investment. PIF, we look at PIF in the league as an investor in some of our clubs, and I'm sure when they made that decision to go and invest into these clubs, they have done it after careful consideration and assessment, and we are glad that the investment took place. The other area where I want to emphasize here, there are other projects in the football ecosystem that are taking place. The biggest of them is clubs privatization. So, my opinion, that investment will come in from, whether it's local or foreign investors. And this is a program that's, undergo right now. A few clubs have been privatized so far. I think other than the 4 clubs we have in the league, we have 4 more clubs in the lower division that are privatized already. I think the next batch is going to take place before the end of the season, and will continue to privatize all of the Saudi clubs. And I'm sure with that we have seen, a great interest from foreign entities to come and invest into the Saudi football clubs.
Alex, if you were advising the Saudi Pro League right now, what would you tell them? What would you suggest?
So I would focus on the local football within Saudi Arabia, building an intense culture and structure, pyramid structure for kids and youth and adults throughout the country in order to develop players and coaches and referees.
Like in Western European countries.
Like in Western European countries,
which is being done incidentally.
Yeah, I mean, when I was there a few years ago, we had somebody go and literally physically inspect every single academy and training center across the country. So, but these things take a long, long time. It's not like other investments where you can see a return in 3 years, 5 years. I mean, this is a people business where a player kicks the ball 2-3 years old and then they turn professional 15 years later. I mean, it takes a long, long time. The same applies to leagues. So that's one thing underneath what's going on. It's a paradox. They can do whatever they can as the league, media rights, competition, competitive balance, but ultimately they're beholden to what's going on underneath and what's going on above. And what's going on above, equally important, intense, strong club competitions on the level above, international level.
Mr. Lazeez, who is Vice Chairman of the Saudi Pro League, let me ask you a different question, which we've had in from viewers. What are the ambitions for the Saudi Women's Pro League? How is that going?
You know, just a couple of years ago, we had no organized football for women, and now we have a league in place that's you know, the number of female footballers registered now is I don't know, 6-7 times what it was 2 years ago. We have a league together. There are plans in place as we speak right now to incorporate that league into our professional women league. So we'll continue to grow in the area. It's one of the areas where we put a lot of focus as a kingdom and as the leader of sports in Saudi.
How do you say, Alex, as an outside observer, the participation rates for girls and boys sort of away from the professional scene in Saudi Arabia?
Well, it's starting from a very low base, obviously. There is now a league. There are regional training centers. There is a West Asian Women's Championship going on right now. The finals tomorrow, actually, being held in Jeddah. And so things are happening. The question is really, how sustainable is that, and how much are women empowered to organize football themselves? Because are they only the women that are allowed to play by their families, because the custodianship law is still there, I believe. And so it's hard to judge, to be honest. Now, when I was there was nothing. So now there is something, which is good. So things have improved. How far that will go, I don't know. But at least in last year or two, things are very positive. We will see. It's a low participation rate across the whole of West Asia. It's an area, but it's the obvious growth area for football globally, because half of the world are women, and in many countries they're not engaged in football or anywhere near where they could be or should be. And so it's a no-brainer in terms of investment. If your investment horizon is not 2-3 years, it's a bit longer.
May I comment here? Just I've known Alex for a long time, but on the custodian laws and you know, the empowerment of women in Saudi Arabia. I mean, you know, I'm 52, going 53 next month, and over the past, I would say, 5 to 10 years, I mean, the empowerment of women that came in within the vision 2030 is you know, unheard of, and in my opinion, we will only continue to grow from here. And you know, lots of the cultural barriers that were there a few years back are no longer there. And was this enabled by the great leadership of our Crown Prince and you know, and the vision he put together since 2015, 2016. So in my opinion, I really wanted to make that comment, which is, to me, it's not only a sports comment, but you know, it's just a comment in general over the empowerment of women in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, and I think you need to visit Saudi Arabia and see what's happening. So I have had the you know, the chance to go down since 2017 when I was running the Bundesliga International, and I went round at that time. Actually, it was about 2 years later. I went round the MAD Academy, and then I went round the Saudi. It wasn't the league, but the Football Association. And I walked in there, and I would say that there was 80% more women sitting in workplaces there than at the German DFL. And it has only gotten more and more. So the steps that the words that you hear coming out from Saudi, if you go down there, they are followed up by actions. And I can fully concur from experience of what happened. This is fact, and it's definitely moving in the right direction. And maybe we should also look at ourselves, because when I go into environments in the world of football anywhere around the globe, generally speaking, you're seeing a lot of males and not that many.
Here we are sitting with 4 men on
there we go. So I think it's a little bit rich to be, you know, making. We have to look at ourselves and then also look at the reality. And I would encourage you, and I'm not there, I'm friends there, to go down to Saudi and see what's happening on the ground.
I mean, that's an extreme comparison, given that in Western countries women were not banned from driving until recently.
But we're talking, but that's correct. And no one, even in Saudi, is saying that hasn't happened. But they say we're now on a route of change, and I see the change.
One question from a viewer, which is one of our last questions. Jordan Henderson went to Saudi Arabia, left far sooner than expected. And there's reports of players finding the adjustment to Saudi Arabia hard, which is natural because, of course, life there is very different from in Europe, where most of them have come from. How are you sort of helping the players embed themselves, and how problematic is it for perceptions when players have these difficult experiences?
So wanted to say a couple of things in here. One, PACE, what we call PACE, which is a Player Acquisition Center of Excellence, was put together to put and adopt best practices when it comes to signing, onboarding, and caring for players. Second thing, Jordan Henderson, I think, even though he left, was one and will still be one of the best signings that we had in the Saudi Pro League. We've signed 93 players in the summer window. I would say I would claim 28 to 30 of them would be in anybody's list of top 300 players. And you don't expect all of them to stay. Sometimes, things do not work out. Sometimes a player does not adapt. You expect those things to happen. But I still maintain Jordan Henderson was one of our best signings. We benefited a great deal from his signings. We learned a lot of lessons and we'll continue to grow from there.
Alex, did that departure stir anything with you, or is this just what happens in football? Players come.
I think so. Did Brazilians want to go and live in Middlesbrough in the 1990s? Not really. I mean, people have trouble adapting. They go to, some adapt, some don't. I mean, that just happens, I think, when there is a big influx of top players into a league.
I mean, it might also be important to kind of offer more player help in these situations.
100%. We do that. I mean, we've been with Jordan throughout his journey from the day we signed him here in the UK to the day he arrived and to the day he left, and we still maintain a good relationship with him. A great guy, a great person. It just did not work out. So that's life.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. We're coming to an end. Thank you to Alex Phillips, to Robert Klein,
Thank you.
and to Mr. Lazeez. Thank you very much. Thanks to the speakers. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
And a reminder that this session will be available on demand for a minimum of 90 days on the event website. In a few minutes, our sports business reporter, Sam Ajini, will chair a special session on the big challenges and opportunities for male and female footballers right now. He'll be with Mahita Molango, the CEO of the Professional Footballers Association, Leon Angel, the head of football at agency CAA Base, and Sarah Gregorius, who heads global policy and strategic relations for women's football at FIFPro. We will be back shortly. Thank you.